And we are back with
Hello.
episode 2 of Raiders of the Past podcast. How are you doing, Miss Jahannah?
I'm good. I'm having a lovely Monday. You said it's your Memorial Day in America.
Yeah. It's our Memorial
What
Memorial
is
Day
that?
here in the States. Oh well, it's just the day that we celebrates the sacrifice that our soldiers have made to keep our country free and give us the life that we have.
Like a military remembering day.
Yep. Yeah. We remember all the sacrifice from, Revolutionary War, Civil War, War of
All the wars.
1812, all, World War, a little bit of World War One, World War Two, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, even all the way up to today. It's just the acknowledgement of all the people who gave their lives for our country.
We have a thing in England called Remembrance Sunday, and it's for World War One and World War Two. Really, there's been so many wars in England, we can't do them all.
Yeah.
So we just do the most recent world wars. But that is, and everybody stops in the whole country at 11 a.m. and does 2 minutes silence. Everybody, and if you go outside, people stop walking. Like everyone just stops and stands still.
Oh wow.
Train stations stop. Like England stops for 2 minutes every Remembrance Sunday at 11 a.m.
Oh wow.
Unless you miss it and you're like, oh crap, I missed the 2 minutes silence.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. And so that is that. What was that? Yesterday for you guys?
No, that's it's in November every year. I think it's the
Oh,
11th
okay.
of November every year.
Okay, but you were saying today was a holiday as well.
Yeah, today is a bank holiday and we have a lot of those. So in England, we have a lot of days off work. It's really important to English people to keep morale up, and I don't know what king decided it would be a good idea, but yeah, we have a lot of national holidays. There's 2 in May, 2 in August, and a bunch of others sprinkled around. So it means that everybody gets the day off work. Well, most people get the day off work on a bank holiday.
Yeah, well, cool. All right, guys. Well, we are just throwing in for anybody who noticed. Usually, we're trying to do the first Monday of every month, but we're jamming in a little extra one here right before Cosmic Summit. So Jahannah and I are going to do we're going to do a live episode together in person from the Cosmic Summit. I don't know exactly what day of June that's going to be yet. Do you happen to know off the top of your head?
Yeah, it's Monday the 17th of June. We're going to be doing a live pod from the summit.
Yeah. So Monday, the 17th of June, Jahannah and I will be together live, kind of just recapping how the summit went down. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot to talk about.
Yeah, best bits, because we're going to learn so much stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're going to want to talk about it immediately. Drop the goth.
What do you think you're most excited about?
Ooh, I'm excited to meet Robert Schoch because I've not yet crossed paths with him. And he was a big player in getting me interested in ancient history. I'm really interested to see Praveen Mohan's talk, just because I think he brings a really good insight from ancient India. And I mean, yours, obviously your presentation.
See, that's the one I was waiting for you to say.
I'm interested to see Ben's as well from Uncharted
Yep.
X.
Yeah.
Says normally he does like a deep dive on one thing, but he says this time he's going to do something a bit different and do a bit more of a big overlook and link lots of stuff together, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
So, hey, it's going to be, yeah, I'm excited for a lot of things. So, can't wait.
Yeah. I like the sweeping presentations. It's going to be cool because Ben went down the whole the last 2 years he's gone down the whole rabbit hole of the tale of two industries, and seeing the two different types of stone masonry that seem to be in Egypt and across the world. He also did a long presentation recently, kind of diving into the vases, and he did a ton of vase videos. So I'm looking forward to seeing, and he did that for like 2 years straight. That was his two main things. And so I'm looking forward to seeing where he goes now, and especially if it's like a sweeping presentation of all of ancient Egypt, or maybe it's a global thing. I'm not sure.
And he's got vase updates. He said because they've been able to scan. He said not better ones than the ones that they originally scanned. And they've also been allowed access to museum pieces.
Oh,
So
cool.
that data is going to be insane. For anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about, there are these pre-dynastic, like 10,000, 12,000 year old vases that are not pottery. They're not made or spun on
Yeah.
a wheel. They are carved from incredibly hard stone, and they are so precise when you scan them through like a CAD scan 3D sort of scanner machine. I'm not sure what that machine's called that they put it through. But anyway,
Yeah.
when they scan them, the geometry, the sacred geometry that jumps out, the maths, it's so insane that they're basically like they're designed almost as if by a computer, but yet they're
Yeah.
pre-dynastic. So they're really weird, odd, out of place artifacts, and there's thousands of them in the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the idea um, is that if we were to recreate them in the modern day, we would use computers and we would obviously use modern day technology to create a vase that has, I guess, cuts and proportions that precise. It's not that the entire every single aspect about those vases are perfect, but it's just that there are certain aspects of them that are, within that are, what is it, like a hundredth of a hair.
Oh
It's
yeah, the tolerances on the on like the you could there's so many aspects. It's like the smoothness, or not only just the smoothness of like the physical, how they cut and carved and polished the stone, but they kept like precise angles, because these vases they're all a bit different, but they have, yeah, like geometries and mathematical arcs that are kept constant. And to do that by hand with it's like it's better than the human eye can
yeah,
even perceive how, like, quote unquote perfect these vases are. And nothing has ever matched them in history since the their pre-dynastic. Nothing in dynastic Egypt or Greek or nothing can match these vases, whatever you
yeah,
want to
yeah.
call
So,
them.
well, I'm looking forward to seeing that research, and I'm looking forward for you to meet Matt Bell, the guy. I mean, I mean, obviously, you've
Oh
already
yeah,
been
I've
on
met him
Matt Bell's
like
show.
virtually, but
Yeah,
yeah, I'd
yeah,
like
yeah,
to
yeah.
meet him in person. Yeah, it's gonna meet so many people.
Yeah, that's gonna be cool. Eventually, you'll have to come down to Florida and see some of those vases as well.
Oh yeah. And a sneaky little thing that I know is that I don't know if I'm letting the secret out of the bag here. Secret out of the bag? Cat out of the bag. But people who come to the Cosmic Summit and buy a ticket are going to get their very own vase. Not a real one, unfortunately, because they're worth thousands and millions of
Yeah,
pounds. But you are going to get a 3D printed replica. I know Matt and George have been busy making sure that everybody who comes can walk away with their own little replica vase for themselves. So that's one incentive if you are into the whole vase thing and you want to get one. Because I think in history, if these vases really do break some sort of paradigm of history, the idea that you get like one of the first ever exact replicas from the guys that own them, then make sure you come to Cosmic Summit this June.
yeah, yeah. That's gonna be really cool. I'm looking forward to everybody getting their own little vases. Now, I see an interesting comment here from Ian Thoring. What do you
Mhm.
guys think of the vases being used as methane storage, going off Jeff Drum's hypothesis of chem production in pyramids, maybe even used as stoves or light sources if they are porous? I I don't know. I don't know because these vases predate. Well, okay,
Yeah,
let's just say I believe what Graham Hancock believes. Graham Hancock believes that the pyramids were built about 4,600 years ago, and that perhaps they were built on top of older primordial mounds that have been there for thousands of years longer. But he thinks that the dynastic Egyptians did build the pyramids, and it has to do with Egyptian cosmology and Egyptian mythology is encoded into the pyramids. It's aligned with celestial bodies that only dynastic Egyptians recognized. I believe that. I share that opinion with Hancock. And so if you're of that opinion, then you believe that these vases predate the pyramids. So you're looking at vases that are even older than the pyramids according to that way of thinking. So I don't know how that then ties into Jeff's Land of Kim's I'm guessing that's the Land of Kim that you're talking about,
yeah,
Jeff.
Land of
Yeah.
Kim. Yeah. Um,
Um
go on.
that's kind of where I'm at is that I don't know. They were used for storing something, I would guess. And I don't know.
Although we don't have lids.
Although we don't have lids.
That's the one weird thing. So all of these vases, they don't have lids, which is why when the Egyptians inherited them from the predecessors, they created their own lids for them, but they made like really weird, primitive, like kind of clay lids. So we have like trays in the museum, trays of dynastic Egyptian lids for these pre-dynastic pots, and they don't aesthetically and quality wise they don't fit together. So that's interesting. So why wasn't there lids, or if there was lids, where are the lids? And yeah, I don't know. We should start a hashtag where are the lids. But I'm on the fence. I am open with the pyramids.
Mhm.
I kept going back and forth between being older, younger, older, younger. However, when I looked into the pyramid carbon dating that they did in the 90s and the 80s, and the carbon dating for all of the pyramids and some of the main sites in Giza, all coming out pretty much at the same time. It doesn't align with the story of one pyramid being built and then another pharaoh building one later. They actually all come out at around the same time, which for me I think indicates a massive fourth dynasty restoration project, recycling project. I think a lot of the pyramids were repurposed and a lot of the Giza was like, but I think some of the older stuff on the Giza plateau, the really big stuff, like the big massive limestone temples, definitely the base stuff, like all the massive like 40-foot massive foundation blocks, I think that was there from a lot longer. And I think that the carbon dating all coming out at the same time rather than all building it all at the same time. I think they were restoring all of it. And that also aligns with the same timeline that they would be restoring the Sphinx for the first time. And they recorded that they repaired the Sphinx in the fourth dynasty. So I'm kind of hedging my bets more into the early dynastics were repairing and recycling and renovating and the whole area, but that there was definitely stuff and structures there before.
So what do you think the vases? What do you think they put in the vases?
And the vase, well, they obviously kept them for a reason because they were really important to them. They were found in early pharaoh and early important people's graves. So they were like, these objects were obviously like revered and baffling, and they didn't know how to replicate them. And they tried to replicate them because you can see them with like pottery that they've painted to look like fake stone. They paint like fake quartz on it, like polka dots. So they obviously were like, whoa, these magic, but I don't know what they are. I kind of think that because they are encoded with so much stuff, maybe it's like holding information, or maybe we're just looking at it with the wrong eyes, and like with the right person who had the right training could take a vase and you'd be able to like lift proportional information, maths, and then be able to, I don't know, it's like us maybe looking at some sort of like protractor or some sort of piece of equipment and be like, whoa, what is this sacred object? And then be like, right, well, if you actually put it on a paper and twist it, you can draw perfect circles. Or like, I don't know. I always think when you're looking at something, what if it can be used inside out, upside down, roll it on something, stack them together?
Yeah. Well, that's something that I'm constantly reminded of in studying the ancient Americas, in that you kind of have to your traditional Western logic, like the way that our brains work and the ideas of what is common sense and logical to us comes from Greece and Rome, which may also definitely is inspired by Egypt, but directly comes from Greece and Rome. And so, Egyptian culture and ancient American cultures are not Greek and Roman cultures. And so when you're thinking about what these people would have used different objects and artifacts for, you will have to completely remove what you think makes sense, if that makes any kind of sense at all. And so it's really hard to we see everything through our own lens and what makes sense to us. But when you're studying ancient cultures, they may as well have lived on Mars because they're just so different than us. So yeah, I agree with that. There's another here's one. So from JT Lewis, he asks, what is the selection process for the vases? Are only the ones that look quote unquote precise being examined and shown, or is there a huge sample size being examined to show the variability? So, to my understanding, this is what's happening. There is a group of, let's say, rogue archaeologists, even if they don't have degrees in archaeology, that are working with collectors, people who are, they have to be wealthy enough to purchase these vases. And they are purchasing vases like this off of a gray market, I suppose is what you would call it, where there are these antiquities that have been in circulation before there was a prohibition on buying and selling antiquities. So anything it's maybe the 1980s or the 1970s, it's anything that was in circulation before that is fair game to be bought, which is millions of artifacts that are still floating around out there. So they have been trying, so they've been examining, they've been getting their hands on whatever pre-dynastic vases, stone vases that are made of granite, diorite, granodiorite. Are there any others?
Yeah, just granite and diorite.
I'd
love for them to do the schist disc. I don't know if some of the trays and the bowls and things are schist. So I've seen. So I would say it's schist, diorite, granite.
Yeah. So there are independent people getting their hands on these vases, which have, you know, uh, you could always question the provenance of them or whether or not they're fakes or not. People are always going to question that. But these most of the time are being bought from reputable dealers who have been selling real antiquities their entire lives that wouldn't really put their whole business at stake for selling a fake antiquity for a ridiculously marked up price. Just because they're selling looted artifacts from the 17 or 18 or early 1900s doesn't mean that they're also dishonest people that are selling fake artifacts. Anyways, so these collectors are then purchasing these and handing them over to individuals who examine them and measure them, and those are all the measurements that we have. Those same people have been trying to go to museums to get access to their collection. I can go down to the San Antonio Museum of Art, and there is a granodiorite vase there that I just took a photo of it last week. And there are these independent researchers are trying to go to these museums to get access to these vases and go measure them, but I think they're reaching a lot of roadblocks. And there's this kind of, I don't even know. This is kind of where the modern feuds start to come in. People realizing that this is being used for quote unquote pseudo archaeology, and they immediately shut it down. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Eventually, there's going to be a break, and independent people are going to start measuring vases that are seen in museums. But as of right now, long story short, these all come from private collections.
No, but they have been doing museum ones. They've got
permission. Oh, have they? Okay.
So now,
as far as I know.
So now there's going to be museum ones that are going to be studied alongside ones in private collection. And the more of the ones that they scan, the more uniform the results they're getting. And I don't know if Ben's going to reveal the results, I think, at the summit. But yeah, like obviously you need to hold space for some of them being fakes that nobody realizes are fakes. If they are fakes that somehow align with the real ones from the museums and whatnot, then that's going to be really interesting because how would you make a fake before anybody realized that the specs on this had like sacred geometry specs to encode? Do you know what I mean? It's like, how would you even fake something like that? Just to answer something I can see in the comments, they're saying that because they'd seen somebody prove that that the Egyptians could make vases of this spec.
Is it this one?
Yeah, and therefore the Egyptians, it wasn't impossible. Actually, no, that's not true because the Egyptians definitely did not make these vases because they come from graves that predate the Egyptians. So you can't have something that the Egyptians made if it was dug up in a grave site that is pre-dynastic. Like there's just no way flat out that could. The grave's been carbon dated to the pre-dynastic. There's some of them go back to literally like 10,000 BC that these vases are popping out. Like, and that's what the museums have in their dating timeline. Like that's mainstream dating. People tend to want to argue with that. But so yeah, they're like categorically they and when they were found in the Egyptian world, they're found in really early, like first, second, third dynasty graves. They're not
Yeah.
they do not appear at any other point. So they're very, very old, even to the very first pharaohs. And there is nothing, literally nothing like it.
Mhm.
All of the and also when I was even in Egypt, we went to the place where the stonemasons do carve the most amazing quartz and stone vases, and they use all the old techniques, and they showed us exactly how they do it with the original tools, and that was really interesting and really amazing, and the craftsmanship is beautiful. But they're doing it out of like quartz and a lot softer stone. And then I went and showed them pictures of the pre-dynastic vases, and I showed the actual experts in Egypt and said, "How do you make this then?" And he went, "Oh no, we have no idea. That you can't. I can't make that." It's so
Wow.
they're the actual people who are from Egypt who have had
And are
they're the
continuing that
stone
legacy.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're the stonemasons who make all of the stuff that you do see in dynastic Egypt. And they were like, "No, we can't make that. We can't make the old the old stuff. Not to that spec."
So our Ak says what graves? So these are Nubian graves that are found in Aswan that predate dynastic Egypt, um, as well as various other places. There are also photos of 9 to 10,000 year old grave sites that also have these. Now, they've never tracked down this exact vase, but there are old photos from graves that are said to be 7, 8, maybe even 10,000-year-old Egyptian graves. And if you look closely in the photo, you can see what looks very, very much like these granodiorite vases in them. So they are of a range of different dates from 3,200 to 5,000, maybe even more BC, of pre-dynastic Egypt,
The oldest
pre-dynastic.
one was 12,000. That was what that because
Yeah,
they're in the
that's crazy.
pre-dynastic Egyptian part of the museums in Egypt,
Mhm.
and they're in the pre-dynastic pottery section of in a lot of other museums, like in the British Museum and things like that. So they were obviously around in the early Egyptian times, but they found them back, you know. They've even found them not even in Egypt. So there was one was found on a diving trip in the Red Sea.
Oh, wow.
So way out. So this stuff also traveled around. They found not what a vase, but it was so there's vases, but there's also kind of like sort of trays and dishes that
Mhm.
are made of the same, obviously the same technique, but super impressive.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, really cool.
Yeah, super
Really,
cool.
really cool.
So, anyways, I titled this episode "The Olmecs,"
Yeah,
and,
let's go over there. Let's you lead this one.
so, yeah, guys, so we're just keeping this, it's a holiday episode. We're both keeping it kind of concise as an extra episode before Cosmic Summit. But I had a little presentation that I did actually while I was on my recent Olmec tour.
Mhm.
And I haven't ever shared it on my channel. So, and I'd like to share it with you, Jahannah. So, this is the Olmec enigma. Let me bring it up here. Aha, there we go. So essentially, this is a little report that I did over the Olmecs and all the mysteries of the Olmecs and the things we know about them. And this may take 2 episodes to get through. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of mysteries with Olmec civilization that people you don't even realize how much is out there until you go. Most of the time, people have perhaps seen this statue that I have here. Have you ever seen this before, Johanna?
Yes, because it looks
Okay.
like it's kind of famous, isn't it? Because it's like it looks a little bit like to me, it looks like a guy in a speed racer from Star
Yeah,
Wars.
yeah, yeah. Well, and he's got the little handbag too,
Yeah. Oh
that
yeah.
everybody, everyone's obsessed with. So
The man bag.
This is Monument 19. It's one of the oldest stone Olmec monuments ever discovered, and it is perhaps the first depiction of Kukulkan or Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god. Um, so there's a lot to get into here, but what I want to do is show just how much more there is in the Olmec world than just the heads. I'm going to take off my jacket. So
It's getting serious now.
Yeah, it's getting serious. So let's do this. All right. So the Olmec enigma. So everybody can still see. You can see my mouse moving around, hopefully. All right, here we go. So to start us off, we have the first discoveries in archaeologists. I apologize if there's any typos in this. I don't think that there is. So the first head is discovered by Jose Maria Selgar y Serrano in the 1860s, I believe. Franz Blom, an explorer from the 1920s, discovers statues at the top of the Tushla Mountains that haven't been attributed to any known culture. They don't quite look Maya. They don't quite look Aztec. They don't quite look Zapotec or Toltec. It's something new that he's discovered with a people with facial features that look much, much different than anything seen anywhere else. Matthew Sterling then discovers other heads and numerous monuments at San Lorenzo and La Venta. Now, Matthew Sterling was like one of the luckiest explorers, archaeologists of all time. Typically, the way it goes with explorers and archaeologists is you have people who spend their entire lives looking for something and they never find anything. And then you have one guy who finds all of it. And Matthew Sterling was kind of he was that kind of guy where he could go on an expedition all day long and not find anything, come back to these little Veracruz huts that he's staying at, and then go on a walk really frustrated. And he believed in connecting to the earth, so walking around barefooted, and he would stub his toe on an Olmec head. And he did that twice, actually. So he discovers numerous Olmec heads, and then his wife, Marion Thompson, who eventually becomes Marion Sterling, determines that the Olmecs predate the Maya through the stela at Tres Zapotes. So she was able to decipher the prehistoric and pre-Maya hieroglyphs that were on a stela found at Tres Zapotes, and she finally confirmed that the Olmecs are the oldest known civilization in Mesoamerica. Which that whole story, so far, yes, yeah. There's a proto-Olmec civilization, they think, but if we were to research it, it would be deep down inside of these caves, which we'll get to, in Guerrero, Mexico, which is one of the most dangerous places to go. So there were some researchers, some young, I think PhD students that went out there, and they were studying, I want to say, plant and animal life next to one of the lakes that are at these proto-Olmec sites, and they were murdered by gangs that are down there. So it's a tough place to do any research at. Okay. All right, so we're going to do a crash course of what has been found. Let's see.
Right.
So Nicholas says, did they find more than just heads? Yes.
It looks like Flintstones, that does.
Yeah, it does.
Flintstones house.
Yes, they found a lot more than just heads. So here we go. So column tombs. Each of these, have you ever seen anything like this before?
No, like I said, for me, it looks like a Flintstones house.
Yeah.
They're kind of, it's like a kind of tomb-shaped box, but made of individual cut stone.
Yeah, they are cylindrical. The Snake Bros had a better word for them, but they are, they're cylindrical, hexagonal, volcanic.
Similar to like Gunung Padang.
Very similar, basically exactly the same thing. And ancient cultures identified these as, basically Lincoln logs that they could use, except very, very strenuous Lincoln logs that they then decided to haul 90 kilometers away to the site that they wanted to live at, which was near the Coetzalcoatl River. So you can just imagine they begin doing this in about 3,500 years ago. And so they had this giant thriving civilization along the Coetzalcoatl River. And what made the Olmecs so successful and so dominant over Mesoamerica was the fact that they had the main river that was right in the middle of all the trade networks in ancient Mexico or ancient Mesoamerica. So they had that main river, and they had essentially streamlined and capitalized maize corn production. So it's exactly the same thing that makes Egypt so monumental, is that they're living along the Nile. They have all the agriculture, therefore they have all the power, therefore they become the first civilization. It's the same thing with the Olmecs. So they have these trade networks that go up 90 miles away to the Sierra de la Tuxtla Mountains, and they're hauling all of these basalts. This is also made out of basalt monuments. So there's so much more than the Olmec heads that they haul 90 kilometers through the jungles, swamps, mountain ranges, across rivers. We're going to get into a lot of it. So
What a
anyways,
job.
yeah. Oh my God. So they're quarried from the Cerro-Sintepec region in the Tuxtla Mountains, over 80 kilometers away, and no bodies have ever been found inside what they think are these tombs due to the acidic soil. Like if you bury something and you come back 3,000 years later, not even the bone will be left.
It's going to be eaten.
However, there's a sarcophagus that we're going to get to that they even found a sarcophagus, and we're pretty certain that it was a sarcophagus, but there was no body inside of it. Very
Of
strange.
course, obviously, because they never do.
And so, so here's another one of these columns that looks like it was cracked, although maybe it was cut somewhere in the middle, but this is estimated to be about 15 to 20 tons. And so you have to imagine there are thousands of these that are being hauled. So imagine when I show you an Olmec head that is anywhere from 20 to 40, all of them are anywhere from around 10 to 40 tons. That's nothing compared to the amount of these column tombs, or the amount of these columns that they're hauling somehow. It's nothing compared to this weight. So they also find jade artifacts and iron ore mirrors. These are also found in the column tombs, reportedly the most finely polished artifacts in all of Mesoamerica, oldest mirrors known in the Americas that are most finely polished anywhere in the Americas, and jade figurines depicting Olmec people with elongated skulls. So after this, we have what most people aren't aware of are megalithic altar/thrones. These are potentially depicting a shaman or oracle emerging from a cave or a portal. Remember how I was saying earlier that the proto-Olmecs can be found in Guerrero, Mexico, inside of these caves?
Yeah.
Well, this is where we think that the Olmec civilization descended from, that at some point more than 5,000 years ago, they were living inside of caves, and that's how their civilization began. And there's something significant and ritualistic about emerging from a cave. When you look at all of their monuments, they're always going to be kind of coming out of this portal, and sometimes they're even holding babies. So carved after being transported 80 plus kilometers. So you see this one that on the top right, that's altar 4, that's 44 tons finished.
Yep.
So right off next to that, they discovered that just the giant blocks that they cut off the side and just tossed it off into the jungle. They discovered the little parts of that monument that would fit next to it. So it would have been 50 plus tons before they carved it. They just
a 50-ton big box.
Yep, a 50-ton giant box.
Wow.
And sometimes depicting a child were-jaguar being carried by a shaman. And we'll get way more into this were-jaguar thing, because this is kind of a half global phenomenon. When I say half global, I mean North America and South America. You see these images of people turning into this god feline. It's this half human. It's like a werewolf, but it's a jaguar person. And could have been an altar to worship the king sitting on the throne. So they don't really know if it's altars or thrones, or if it's just both. And child were-jaguar could be the king's claim to his shamanic power and kingship. But there's a couple problems with, if this were-jaguar or these shamans that are emerging from the portals, if that is supposed to depict the king, then why do the Olmec heads look nothing like them? It's like two different species of humans that we see in the Olmec world. So the next thing we see are these giant mosaic floors. They're roughly 15 by 20 feet long, and they consist of up to 485 blocks of serpentine. And that's, I believe that's per level, but I could be wrong about that. And comes from the Sierra de la Tuxtla region and Guatemala. So they were actually commissioning this serpentine stone. This isn't something that's found in their own region. So they have enough power to purchase this from other cultures who are mining it up for them and then sending it to them. So one mosaic floor consists of 28 layers. So they found 5 of these things. So it's 28 layers, just like the pattern that you see here on the right.
Yeah.
It's 28 layers of that. All together, they weigh more than 1,000 tons, and they were all constructed and buried at the same time.
Wait, hold on. Sorry, just gonna go head around this. So it's 28 layers on top of, like a cake, like a 28 layer cake mosaic.
Yes.
That's weird, because what's the point? Because you only get to see the top layer of the mosaic, like visually.
Well, you couldn't even see that because they buried it.
That's weird. So is
They,
it?
they
It's like a big Jenga, building a massive Jenga stack and then burying it.
burying the whole thing, and it all happened at one time. It wasn't 28 different periods of time. It was all very quickly, and they know that by excavating. I spoke to a geologist there who kind of explained it to me, and he said any geologist, if you were to, make a pit and you were to look at the soil, it is the most obvious thing to tell if it was all buried at the same time. He had a better way of explaining it, but I believed him, and that's kind of the consensus among people who research these giant mosaic floors. So what they think that it might be is some kind of monumental sacrifice to either an ancestor or a god of some kind, that they're making these mosaic floors that no one is going to see but some kind of heavenly being. And they think it might even be like an earth god, or like the Maya call it the Wheats monster, which is the god of the god of the ground, or the god of the mountain, or the mountain monster. They think that it may even be to acknowledge him. So they're basically giving him a sacrifice. I saw a cool comment here. Somebody said 28 like moon cycles. Exactly like that. Everything. Mesoamericans were the greatest astronomers that the ancient world has ever seen. I mean, maybe only rivaled by Mesopotamia and potentially Egypt in some places, and the Greeks when they were in Egypt, but probably not eclipsed by any other culture in the ancient world. And so, yes, there's so many different lenses to look at artifacts and different mysteries in Mesoamerica, but you're going to see the number 28 pop up a lot. So
Probably because they're tracking the menstrual cycles. These women going, you know what? I'm going to log it.
They definitely are. And they're definitely noticing. I couldn't even think of everything off the top of my head, but how many cycles are based on 28 days? I mean,
yeah,
snakes shedding their skin. It's just, it goes on and on and on and on. I think that snakes shed their skin on a 28-day cycle. I don't know if it's every 28 days, but it is a 28-day cycle, I believe. So burial caches and mosaics. So this one's pretty interesting. So there's 15 jade figurines and one red stone figurine. He's in the back and he's kind of halfway covered up. He's in the back in the middle. Flanked by 6 stelae, also 6 stelae found at Levinta that are at the base of the Great Pyramid of Levinta. And I will sort of explain this procession that's going on when we get there. Figurines depict a ceremony or procession of some kind. This is basically like a screenshot of Olmec society. So there's something really important happening here. They basically have taken a screenshot of it, but without any of the context or literary evidence of what this used to be. But I mean, whatever they're depicting is something that was actually happening. This is kind of something that you don't really see at all in the ancient world.
Like a photo. It looks like Fight Club. Or maybe it was Olmec Fight Club. You know, they're all, for anyone who's just listening, it's a bunch of jade figurines that look like kind of very, very early prototype action men. And they're all stood in various, sort of like a circle. They're like in a group with kind of 6 dolmen type Stonehenge things, but in the background.
Yep.
And and they've got like kind of crosses on their back that looks like they're wearing swords.
Well,
maybe it's like a pre-battle plan, bro.
Well, those are actually just wires, I think, that are meant to hold them up.
Oh, right, maybe not.
Yeah. So Beetlejuice says those are literally looking like Easter Island statues in mini form. Jahannah's going to Easter Island this year.
I am, but they do actually, don't they? Because they've got such big heads.
Yeah. The idea is, I saw Dr. Barnhart on a video on Wired. If you're familiar with that YouTube channel, he was just on Wired recently, and he was talking about how Mesoamericans may have been elongating their skulls to. I think everyone pretty much agrees with this, that they were elongating their own skulls as like a status symbol. But it's just amazing that
look at my big brain.
Yeah, you see these guys with elongated skulls here. There's so much to unpack about the Olmecs with elongated skulls, but you see these guys here with elongated skulls. You see it in ancient Peru. You see it in Easter Island. We could do a whole episode just on that, because the people from Easter Island supposedly landed on Easter Island coming from Polynesia, and they hadn't quite made their way to Peru yet. But it's very clear that those monoliths on Easter Island have elongated skulls, I would say.
Yeah,
But
elongated everything.
when is Easter? I'm not an expert on Easter Island, but when are they said to have constructed those? Is it
Oh,
AD or is it BC?
um, I think it's AD. I
Mhm.
think it's they're like about 1,600 years old. I'm gonna let's give that a quick Google because
Yeah.
um
Anybody know in the comments
out of
when the
Archaeology.
Moai statues are?
Um,
So Beetlejuice says 100 AD.
yeah. So it's between, but the Rapa Nui carvers create some 900 between roughly 1,100 AD and 1650, like super recently, apparently.
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. That it seems like in the
Yeah, like
Americas.
1,000 years ago. They're about that. Well, supposedly 1,000 years old, yet
Yeah.
buried up to their necks,
Hmm.
and the
Yeah.
entire ground, like not just around the statue, the entire landscape has been filled in. Do you know what they would have to fill in, like entire mountainsides just to get them up
Oh
to
yeah.
their?
Yeah.
I don't think they were made 1,000 years ago. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, so that's kind of the thing is that in the ancient Americas, almost everything is AD. Almost everything. It sort of the ancient Americas. It seems like they really start hitting their height around 200 AD, and
Mhm.
from Central America, even all the way up in North America, Mississippian, Chaco Canyon, the Four Quarters region, or the Four Corners, because you have the Inca world as well. But all the way down to South America, they all start hitting their height around 800 AD. And so that's kind of one of the things that's strange about the Olmecs. You see their elongated heads here. This is 3,500 years ago, is what we're looking at right now, roughly.
Mhm.
And they look so similar to the Moai statues, but the Moai statues are supposedly 2,000-ish years later and are
No,
not
no. Do you
thought
know
to
what
have had.
the Moai statue? Somebody sent me something recently, actually, which kind of blew my mind. You know, some of the really recent human statues that they're digging up in Karahan Tepe in Turkey, which is older, 1,000 years older than
Mm,
Göbekli Tepe. Well, filled in 1,000 years older, just to say. Um, there is some human statues coming out of Karahan that are so similar to the Moai, like the hand placements, the hips, the ribs. It's like, and these are obviously Karahan is like, you cannot dispute the age of them. They are 12,000 years old, and the fact that they are the human statues in Turkey and the ones on Easter Island, yet they are supposedly, there's a 10,000 year difference between the two, and
mm.
it's odd. It's a very odd. Like the ones I got sent through to my email, I was like, okay, I'm going to go up close and check this out later this year when I go to Easter Island. But there's just too much similarity. I really feel like there's some sort of bond between ancient Turkey and Easter Island.
Very interesting. Yeah, you'll have to send me some photos of that
I will send you it because it's
iconography.
like it's the new stuff that's coming out of Turkey that looks like stuff on Easter Island, and I'm like,
Well,
okay,
we'll have to do an episode recapping your trip
yeah, we
when
will.
you get back. So, anyways, yeah, so very much like they look very much like what we see on Easter Island, but not thought to have any connection whatsoever, and
Mhm.
up to around 2,000 years difference. So, statues and stelae. So, you see these two twin statues that are here on the left. Those were
Oh, they're
found
lovely.
on the top of the Sierra de la Tuxtla Mountains, just sitting up at the top. And a guy named Franz Blom, he's one of the guys that Indiana Jones is based on. Um, Climbs to the top of that mountain with a few local indigenous people who are probably descendants of Olmecs as well, and they showed him these statues that are sitting up there. And he's the first one to document it and bring it to the Western world. So they say he discovered it. There's a funny joke that's like, we have all these ideas of these Victorian English explorers trotting off into the jungle, and they're like, look at what I discovered with my little friend who told me where it was.
It's like, yeah. You
So,
didn't. But hold on, let me just describe this again. So it's two statues in a very weird position because they look like they're sitting on their knees, but they're leaning forward to support their weight on their forearms, like kind of gorilla pose,
mhm.
I'd call it. and then they've got like the big round sort of Olmec head and helmet, but then on top of them, from what I look, it looks like a pharaoh's hat.
Yes, it
Right?
does, doesn't it?
It's even got the stripes at the side of what you know, like a kind of pharaoh's headdress with the
Yeah.
stripy side, sort of like ear flaps, we'll call them that. Very unusual pose. Not my favorite. I mean, I don't think it's the most flattering
No, no.
buffet. I wouldn't want my
It
statue like that.
Yeah, so these are called the twins. They're found on two different mountaintops facing each other. And
Whoa.
they're found on mountaintops that are about 90 kilometers away from the Olmec heartland. And so there's not really an explanation as to why they're on these mountains. We have no idea what the significance of these two mountains where these two twins are sitting on and facing each other. And what's interesting is that, oh man, the snakes, they brought this up at one point as well, and maybe you'd be more familiar with this reference. But if you see, it looks like they are grabbing the staff and that they're lifting it. Have you ever heard of this motion before? It's like, man, somebody in the comments might know. It's something that the snakes are interested in, that they study, that they said it looks very similar to, but it's not something that I study. Maybe somebody in the comments will recognize.
Raising the staff. Okay, yeah, they're kind of
Raising the
like
staff, yeah,
their hands.
exactly
Oh
what
yeah,
they
because actually they've got one. Now I look at it, they've got what, like their left hand is kind of gripping under a stick, and the right hand is gripping, or the other way around. So it looks like they're about to start kicking ass with some sort of stick.
That's what it looks like. Furthermore, those headdresses that you said look sort of pharaonic.
Mhm.
Never just like the pharaoh headdresses. So you have
Like
the headset,
just.
you have the white crown, you have the red crown, you have the headdress that comes flowing down, you have the Egyptian
Yes.
beards. None of those have ever been discovered, and no Olmec headdresses, which we're going to get into, which some of them look it's just amazing that there's a few different types of Olmec headdresses
Mhm.
that all look it. Well, I say there's a few different types that look Egyptian,
Mhm.
and neither Olmec or neither Egyptian headdresses, none of them have ever been found. We have no idea what they were made of. We don't know what colors they were. So that's fascinating in itself. So, anyways, they depict were-jaguar children with cleft-lipped were-jaguar people. So if you were to go up to them, you can see that they would have these like cleft lips. I mean, you've seen the deformity of cleft lips before.
Oh
That's
yeah, yeah, many
that's what
many people have it.
we think that it may have been a common genetic deformity in the Olmec people, and that it had some kind of, I don't know, they gave it some kind of divine understanding
Yeah,
that.
maybe they thought it was like a blessed child who was born with a cleft.
Well, that seems to be something that's pretty common in Mesoamerica. So when the Spanish showed up in the city of Tenochtitlan, which is the capital of the Aztec world, they noticed that Moctezuma had all of these. He had a lot of deformed people around him. So he had hunchback people. He had very grotesque looking people with all kind of deformities in his palace sitting around him. And we think that rather than, in the Western world, people with deformities are kind of looked down upon. They thought that, and we see it in the Maya world too, even with dwarfs. Anybody who has some kind of deformity, they think that they were touched by the gods, that there's something special about them, and that they need to be protected and looked after. And so, yeah, even Moctezuma, one of the most, vicious emperors in all of the ancient world, who, enslaved so much of Mesoamerica, he took care of and cherished people with deformities, and they lived in his palace next to him. They sat next to his throne. So it's kind of one of those things I'm saying when you're studying the ancient world, whatever you think makes sense in your brain, just throw it out, because
Mhm.
you're studying people who may as well have lived on Mars. So another thing to recognize is that the stela that we see on the right, very similar to Göbekli Tepe, which I think that is mostly limestone. Is that right?
Mhm.
So in the Olmec world, people don't really realize this. In the Olmec world, they're using a rock that's even harder than limestone, much harder than limestone, which is basalt. And so, like in Göbekli Tepe, how they're pulling the surface of the limestone stele away to reveal
Yeah, it's in
carvings.
relief, which is hard, yeah.
Exactly. The Olmecs are doing the same thing on basalt. So it's
Wow.
you're talking about, and what's interesting is similar to Göbekli Tepe. I mean, we know of sites that are older than Göbekli Tepe, and you kind of see an increase in sophistication, just very, very slightly, in ancient Turkey. In the Olmec world, we don't see an increase. We don't see it kind of ramp up. It just begins exactly with what you're looking at.
Yeah,
All
it
of
just
the
starts.
monuments I've been showing, they are doing this according to the archaeological record. There's probably a lot that's left out. There's probably a lot that hasn't been discovered. But according to the archaeological record, it just begins like this. And it's even more true for, when people who study ancient Egypt, they often say, well, they started building pyramids right at the beginning. Well, no, I mean, there's regardless of what you think, there's thousands of years of, I say that, well, thousands, but definitely hundreds of years of documented history before they even get to the pyramids. There's a little ramp up, and then it starts moving really fast, and they start building the pyramids. And according to my beliefs, they have this time of monumental architecture that's at a scientific height that then falls off, and it's never achieved again. But there's a little bit of a buildup before they get to the pyramids. But here it is right from the very beginning. They're making Olmec heads. They have these giant monuments. They have a writing system. There's nothing really that comes before this. So, all right, oldest pyramid in Mesoamerica.
Woo.
So the only, well, I guess we will. I will address that. This is the oldest pyramid in Mesoamerica. It is 110 feet in height, and it is 200,000 tons of fill. Originally thought to represent perhaps, there's lots of volcanoes in the Olmec area. There's actually a volcano that's going to go off like any day now and just completely eviscerate the city that lives right next to it, and the people just decide not to move. It's so it's a site called Kakashla. Anybody could just Google this. I was at a site called Kakashla, standing on top of a pyramid, looking at a giant volcano, and there's smoke coming out of the volcano, filling up the entire sky. And they're like, yeah, it's going to blow any day now, and it's going to be just going to level the whole city next to it. And I'm like, and there are people living in that whole city, and they're like, yep, they refuse to move. So probably in our lifetime, there's a giant volcano that's going to go off in the Olmec world and kill hundreds of thousands of people. So anyways, it's originally thought to have been a mountain or a volcano, but it's proven to have 4 sides prior to abandonment when they've done some excavations. So it's not a volcano. It is a true pyramid. And the only older pyramid is found at Poverty Point, which is in Louisiana, I believe. And that Poverty Point is dated to be about 9,000 years old. It's either 9,000 or 9,000 BC. So
It's
this
BC Poverty Point.
Is it really 9,000 BC?
I don't know if it's BC. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think.
Google.
I'm just not sure if it's 9,000 years ago or 9,000 years BC.
Well, it's saying it's 3,400 years ago, so maybe it's 900 BC. Wait, let's have a look.
Oh, really? Really?
Poverty Point, indigenous people between 1700 and 1100 BC. So
1100 BC. Isn't there a 9,000? John. John's watching this. John lives in Louisiana. I knew you'd leave a comment. John, what is the name of the site in Louisiana that is like 11,000 or 9,000 years old? There's a mound that's there, and I thought it was Poverty Point, or maybe it's that the first evidence of habitation that we have at Poverty Point goes back to
because the site of Stonehenge, so like they kind of date Stonehenge to 2000, say 2500 BC ish. It's pre-pyramid, so a bit older than that. But then they found evidence of people living and using the site from 7000 BC. So the site is super old, and people were obviously drawn and using the site for thousands of years before they put the stone stuff there, and then they put wooden buildings and structures there for thousands of years before they put the stone one. So it's always older.
But even so, Poverty Point is still
mega old.
Yeah, still the only older.
I think pyramid. Graham Hancock thinks Poverty Point's like even older. I think that's what he's arguing for. So who knows?
Well, there's probably ancient dates that I'm sure many of the cities in the Americas have been inhabited for 30,000 years. They used to think, it was 12 to 15,000 years ago people were coming into the Americas. Now they're pushing it back to 30,000. And then now there's evidence that it's like 150,000 years ago. So, who knows? Who knows how old everything really is? Let's see. Mysterious Mountains. What's up, man? This guy has a great page, and he knows a lot about ancient, what would be considered modern day United States. Okay, so let's continue. So colossal heads. So there's 17 known colossal heads. However,
17 big boys.
However, those are 17 basalt heads. Dr. Barnhart and I, this hasn't come out yet. I'm waiting to make a video to publish this. Dr. Barnhart and I, in a private collection that I was able to get photos of, found 3 more. I say we found them, but it felt like we found them because I'd never seen them on the internet before. We found 3 more limestone Olmec heads that are about twice as big as all the heads that we saw. Couldn't even believe it. We walked into this room. They were like these metal sheds where they were keeping Olmec artifacts out of the rain, essentially. And so we met up with a couple of archaeologists from ENA who let us in, and it was this insanely obscure little museum that it couldn't even be called a museum. I mean, we paid just pennies to go in there, and there's a little logbook, and so we would make a joke every time we would go in. We're looking at some of the world's greatest artifacts and monuments, some of the ancient world's greatest artifacts and monuments that come from one of the fertile crescents of the ancient world. And the logbook says that the last person that was here was 4 weeks ago. Just
whoa.
Yeah, it was amazing. And then before that, it was 4 weeks before that, so these are very obscure sites. I was, fortunate to go and got photos of everything, and everybody watching will eventually see these. But we walk into this metal building, and we walk in, and there's 1, 2, 3 giant limestone Olmec heads that are twice as tall as any of the other basalt heads. And we look at each other, and we're both like, what is this? Not even a guy who's been a Mesoamerican archaeologist for 35 years, has never seen these before. And so it really, really cool. And so there's definitely more than 17. And now that we know that there's limestone Olmec heads, who knows? But they were really, really badly eroded. You almost couldn't even tell the features anymore. You had to see it from a certain light to be able to. We turned off some of the lights to be able to see it from different angles, and you could still make out some of the features. But they're believed to be unique portraits of Olmec rulers, although almost certainly not all rulers had colossal heads commissioned, because this is a 2,500 year long civilization here, or about 2,500 years, around 2,000 years. And so, there would have been definitely more than 17 rulers. So there's definitely more out there to be discovered, although probably not all of them had their own heads. And the size of the head may indicate what the king, how powerful the kingdom was at the time, and how much basalt they could actually commission to be pulled, to have their giant head made. So all of them measure between 4 feet 10 inches tall and 12 feet tall, and weigh between 6 to 40 tons. But that 40 would actually go up to 42 for the La Cobada head that we'll get to. And they're found at all 3 major Olmec sites, which is San Lorenzo, La Venta, and Tres Zapotes. And many have markings on their heads as though they were intentionally damaged. You can see that on the top right. Looks like these scars that are going down the top of their heads.
Yeah.
Although it's also theorized that it is accidental damage during carving. So they're carving it away, and then boom, they hit a big chip through. But
damn it, Brad.
Yeah, but
You've ruined the piece.
Dr. Barnhart and a lot of academics don't think that's the case. They don't really know what it is. They don't think that it's another culture trying to come and deface the heads, because you would see it on the face. They wouldn't be carving away at it from the top of the head.
I feel like, go with me, that maybe it became, because how in statues today, it becomes lucky to touch a certain part of it. So these old statues, like these kind of bronze statues, are all like green and gray, and then they've got like one gold shoulder where everybody goes and gives it a rub. It could have been that like later times it became like lucky to sharpen your knife on an Olmec god's head and it would bless your knife or whatever. So
Ah,
I'm just sort of have the idea of people. It becomes like a weird tradition, like we do. We rub the statue of the dog on the nose, and then the nose becomes worn away after years and years and years. Maybe there was some sort of like lucky little thing where people would be like, I will bless my battle sword with the Olmec head and give it a little swipe or whatever. Because it looks
I
like
like that.
it looks like stone sharpening tool marks or animal
It does,
horns when
doesn't it?
they. So that's why I immediately thought like maybe it was a thing. Interesting to note because all you said there was 17 Olmec kings they're supposed to be, but they all
Mm.
the facials, it looks all very similar in the same way that all of the different pharaoh faces across Egypt are all supposed to be different pharaohs, yet they all look, apart from Akhenaten, they all look exactly the same. Like
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
carbon copied, buff, really, really blank face
yeah.
stare. Like none of them are smiling. Come on, guys. Little smile. Little smile here.
There's actually one guy who's happy. There's
Okay.
one
The one
little
happy
Olmec head
king.
that's smiling. When you get all 17 of them together on a photo that, they've got some diagrams, you
Mhm.
can then start to see the differences, and it then becomes clear, like, oh, okay, that's a different guy. That's a different guy. But another thing to think
They
is
look
that
like babies. They proportion wise, it looks they look really infantile. Like
they have extremely soft features,
it
very
looks like
round.
little, but even just like the way that the eyes are really big for the face,
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
way
Oh,
that
yeah.
baby's eyes are human. Well, obviously they're human size, everyone, but baby's eyes come out like
Mhm.
adult size, and that's why they're so ridiculously big. And then everything else grows around the eyes. It's a similar, like these eyes are almost way too big.
Well, that's interesting because they do have a fascination, almost an obsession with babies in the Olmec world. There are hundreds, probably thousands of jade statues of babies, and
They're nonces, all of them.
on top of that, um, on top of that, I met an Olmec man while I was there. A guy who, I mean, he was just so obviously an Olmec
Mhm.
person. He opens up this museum. It was another museum that we went to that nobody had been to in months. And we knock on the door, opens it up, and standing in front of me is an Olmec. And he's got the head. He's got the big, round, chubby head with the big lips and the big nose and the big eyes. And I was like, whoa, okay, here you are. There's a real Olmec standing right in front of me. But Olmec people in Veracruz have strangely different genetics than the rest of Mexico. One thing you don't realize before you start driving around Mexico, so when you go
Mhm.
from the Yucatan down into Veracruz to Mexico City, is that Mexicans look vastly different everywhere you go. And I just, being from Texas, being from Texas, I interact with Mexicans who live, close to Texas, either in Texas or somewhere along the border. They look differently than Mexican people that you meet in the Yucatan. And then when you drive from the Yucatan to Veracruz, they look different again. And
Mhm.
so in ancient times, you would have had a lot of homogeny in your culture. Everybody would have had basically the same DNA. They would have all looked super similar. This is before you have every single culture on the earth all melding together, and now everyone looks so different. Back
Mhm.
then they would have all looked the same. Like if you go to there's a Western Mexico museum at the National Museum of Anthropology in Mexico City, and if you go to the Western Mexico Museum where you look at the terracotta um, little statues that they make, every single person looks exactly the same because they must have all looked the same. They have these really sharp cheekbones. Um, I don't know if I could pull up a picture of like a modern day Mexican person, you would say, "Oh, I've seen people that look just like that," and you see that all across Mexico. Anyways, I'm going down a whole rabbit hole. Um, these are also transported 80 to 90 kilometers away from the Tuxtla Mountains, and how these are transported, we'll get into, but it's a whole can of worms. So this is the largest head, the La Cobada head. It's 12 feet tall and 40 to about 42 tons. But you got to think how much extra space was on this head before they carved it away, because
Yeah, it would have
originally
been a
it
square.
was like
Yeah, a big old square.
yeah, originally it was a big square or just a gigantic chunk. We don't even know. I mean, they could have been moving blocks that they carved two heads out of. We just don't have that evidence anymore.
Are they 100% made to be just heads? It's not a case of like they originally were on bodies and chopped off and
No,
repurposed
so
anyway?
we haven't found anything that would be a body. No,
Yeah. Have you
like that.
tried looking in the ground?
Could you imagine? Oh, another thing is that these heads are found. So most Olmec artifacts are about 6 to 12 feet under the ground. And when we were at the site of San Lorenzo, which is San Lorenzo is a Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe is where civilization emerged, sprouted out of nothing. San Lorenzo is one of the fertile crescents of the ancient world as well. And so we're standing there, and it's just farmland, and you can kind of see these ancient 3 to 4,000 year old temples sitting underneath the grass out there. But there's no monuments out there anymore. They've moved them all to protect them, and make money off of them. So we were talking to a local Olmec man who lived in the area that's been on archaeological digs at that site since he was 16 years old, and he said that there were heads there that were found 60 feet under the ground. And Dr. Barnhart goes, "Hold on, 6 feet under the ground?" And the guy's like, "No, 60." And of course,
60 feet?
he's
Nah.
speaking in Spanish. He's like 60. He's like 6 feet, and he goes, "No, 60." 16 feet? No, 60.
60.
And Dr. Barnhart's like,
No,
"What?
that's
How is
that's
how
not.
is that possible?" So I don't know. That's mystery. That's something we're gonna go back. We're gonna go back to San Lorenzo in December and reinvestigate that in particular. But yeah, 60 feet under the ground. That's either these are unimaginably old or they're being purposefully buried that deep. And I don't know. I mean, these were dug up. These were dug up 100, at least 100 years ago, around 100 years ago. And so, you can't go back and then you can't repeat the process of digging it up to see how old, the soil was, or how, study the stratigraphy layers of the soil and try to diagnose if it was buried or if this is natural.
If you think about it, we have our entire view of human history, all of our studies, all of our numbers, everything comes from actually a very small layer of the surface of the earth, and nothing really underwater, because we haven't really looked under the water for a lot of stuff. So it's we've everything that we're gonna know is kind of from, yeah, I'd say like the first 100 feet. I'm just imagining, like, if these heads are popping up 60 feet underground in some areas, like, what if at 120? Do you know what I mean? Like, why
Mhm.
not 60? It's ridiculous. There's granite that is found 60 feet under the front of the Sphinx.
Oh, yeah, wow.
They drilled down outside the front of the Sphinx. There's like the Sphinx temple
Mhm.
and the whole sort of promenade that comes up to it. And they were drilling down, trying to do what were they? Well, I think they were trying to check the water table around the Sphinx for protection and whatever. And they drilled right down, and then they smashed their blades for the drill bit, because they hit granite block, and granite is not like indigenous to Giza. They have to get it all the way from Aswan and take it that like 600 miles or something crazy. So the fact that there is either a granite structure or granite blocks, or there is something granite that is 60 feet under the front of the Sphinx and the front of the Sphinx temple. So that always makes me think, like, yeah, we've got all of our information from what we can dig up from pretty much, it's such a teeny bit of the Earth's surface. And if we were able to, like, if they could invent some sort of real super rock scanner that could scan,
Mhm.
500 feet all over
I
the world, what we would
I'm
find under there.
sure that that's gonna be invented sometime soon. There's no
I will
way.
invent it
Yeah.
somehow.
There's no way that something like that won't be invented, where they can just scan through and see all the different stones that are under the ground. That's gotta be, like, the
They
next
gotta
invention.
be, but there's yeah, it's just like, it's all gonna come out. It's all gonna come out, the deeper that we go.
Alright, so getting to the enigmas, and we'll just kind of dive into this a little bit. We're gonna keep these episodes pretty concise, but
Okay.
we're gonna dive into some of the mysteries of the Olmec heads before we answer some questions and bring it to a close here soon. But this is one of my favorite things in the Olmec world, is the lost sarcophagus. So I love sarcophagi. I think they're super, super cool.
Mhm.
They tell us a lot about the ancient world. If a place really, or if an artifact really is a sarcophagus, it tells you a lot about the people of that culture, and of course, of the prominent ruler who was buried in it, or maybe a priest, somebody who was high ranking. But so this was discovered by Matthew Sterling in 1939, and it's a low relief depiction of a reptilian dragon body kind of along the sides. And it was filled with jade offerings, red clay, and cinnabar, but there was no body in it. And so there's no way that this was buried with a body inside of it. And over the last 3,500 years, the body decays completely. They're like to the point that there's not even bones left in it.
No, there'd be forensic evidence of burials.
There would be forensic evidence of organic matter that once existed, or human organic matter that once existed inside the sarcophagus, but they didn't find that. They found jade offerings, red clay, and cinnabar filled to the brim. No body inside whatsoever, which is absolutely bizarre for something that seems like it is so obviously a sarcophagus.
Well, maybe it was a treasure. It was a treasure chest. Treasure.
Well, the thing is, these are also. This isn't the only one that was found, but these are also found inside those stone column tombs. So or that, at least that stone column box looking thing. This little sarcophagus will be found in there, laid on top of a basalt or a limestone bed. Essentially, I call it a bed, but it's just like a slab, and it's laid on top of that. And so it looks exactly like a tomb. They go in, open it up, nobody. Just bizarre. And it's made of sandstone. And so the sandstone in general does not last that long. And why they made it out of sandstone, I have no idea, because they could have easily made this out of basalt. But the force that it took to lift this sandstone sarcophagus crumbled it in half. They picked it up and then they broke it in half. And, it's kind of like a domino effect. It just goes and just turns into a pile of dust. And this would have been one of the most amazing artifacts to come out of the Olmec world. And for whatever reason, it was made out of sandstone. I'm sure there has to be others that are made out of basalt. But this is a huge, huge mystery. This is a basalt depiction. So you can see how close. I mean, why not just finish the thing on the right and make that a sarcophagus if that's what it's doing? Because it's depicting a quote unquote sarcophagus with a person in it. This person may be a dwarf. We don't really know. Because, like I was saying earlier, they venerated people with quote unquote deformities. So we don't really know if this was dwarf or not, or if whoever just carved this just didn't have the best idea of human proportions. But
he's a little bit stout, but I like his skirt. I like his hat. I like his vibe.
A little bit. And how Indian does this look to you? Like if I told you that this came from ancient India.
Oh yeah, it doesn't it?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's got the earrings.
The sarcophagus one looks, to me instantly, I thought like Chinese, Chinese dragon, and the other one, Indian. Yeah,
it's I can't explain it. I don't know. It's just one of the many mysteries. Another thing that makes Mesoamerica very similar to ancient Indian and ancient Asian cultures is that we think this is kind of the front edge of archaeology in Mesoamerica, but we think that a part of their religion was appreciating sacred geometry. And so it's just, what are the odds that they have that in common with ancient Indian, Cambodian, other various ancient Asian cultures? They have very similar genes because Native Americans came from Asia. So they have very similar genes, but their monumental architecture looks similar. Their carving looks similar. Their statues look similar. And their religions both venerate sacred geometry, which is just, I don't know. That in itself is a whole mystery. So here we go again. Thrones, altars, or both. There are a lot of times thought that there are altars that people will go up and worship in front of, but then it's possible that the king is sitting on top of it as well. So you look at it to the left, it looks again like these very short, stout people are holding up a throne that you can imagine a king would be sitting on top of. But then in the middle, you have what is a depiction that's found on an altar of a shaman basically emerging from a portal or from a cave, carrying a were-jaguar child. We'll show a lot more photos, but you can see he's got the cleft lips as well. He's got the feline lips. extremely Asian looking eyes. Of course, Native Americans are Asian. And then he's got the long, elongated hat as well that kind of bends over on the front, perhaps like
a little gnome hat, like a little,
yes,
garden
so
gnome's hat.
you can imagine that underneath that hat is a very long skull as well. And I'll have a lot
Oh, of
more,
course. Yeah.
examples. And then on the
Looking
right,
a little bit like a north, the Upper Egypt hat as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
the Headdress, is that right?
I just know it's the Upper Egypt
Yeah,
hat,
yeah.
but it's like the cone hat that was the two hats that they put together when they
Yes,
united both
exactly,
sides of Egypt.
exactly
But it
right.
looks like the Upper Egypt, Northern Egypt hat.
And then you can see on the right, this is a miniature depiction of a throne. So it's about this big. For anybody looking, it's like maybe 2.5 feet tall by a couple feet wide. And
Like a
so
tiny potty.
you can see this is an altar / throne with somebody sitting up on it. So we see these little clues coming together. And so we're beginning to realize, okay, it's not a throne or an altar. They're both. It's together. And that is so Mesoamerican. You know, when you look at something from our Western Greek and Roman thought, we look at it and we're like, okay, it's either one thing or the other. No, in the Mesoamerican world, it's all of it. It just
Wait, go on. Sorry, just the thrones, right? The thrones on the far side, the one that looks like a big table with babies holding it up. But then you look and it's like they're Olmec heads. And I said the Olmec heads look like babies. Now I can see the head on what would have had a body. It's babies. It's baby bodies.
Yes, they
That's
look
babies.
like
They're
they look
babies.
like babies.
I've cracked it. All the heads are babies.
Tell you what, I actually don't think I have this in this presentation because there's so many things, but I am going to pull up some Olmec babies, and we're gonna.
That's 100% Olmec helmeted heads, but they've got baby bodies, and the babies are holding up the throne building thing.
Okay, can everybody see? Yeah, here we go. Olmec babies.
They are creepy looking babies. Oh my gosh.
How bizarre is that?
That's a hench baby. That baby's gonna swing.
Look at that.
Oh, wow.
How strange is that?
That looks like an old man baby. But again, maybe society was built. Okay, that's really creepy. This is the stuff of nightmares. I'm gonna be having nightmares about Olmec babies now.
So here's the thing. All right, this is the wildest thing, and then we'll probably draw to a conclusion.
Come into land
and answer some questions here at the end, because there's so much more to go. We'll have to do like multiple episodes of Olmec stuff.
Yeah.
So this is the craziest thing that I'm working on right now. So for anybody who's been keeping up with me, I'm writing a book right now called The Olmec Enigma, and it is derivative of a very famous chapter from a very famous book. This is the artwork that was finalized recently.
Oh, nice.
The Olmec Enigma.
Sneak peek.
That's a sneak peek. I don't know. I have no idea when the book is going to come out. Probably early 2025. I'm working on a chapter right now about the possibility of Olmec people venerating children with ectodermal dysplasia. So I think it's tangentially connected to Down syndrome. And so when the Spanish show up and they show up to Moctezuma's temple, so this is the Aztecs. This is 2,500, 2,000, 3,000 years after the time of the Olmecs. They show up to Moctezuma's palace temple and they walk in, and he's got hunchbacks. He has people with deformities, missing limbs. He has people with what we now would know as Down syndrome, and all around him. And Mesoamericans, rather than looking down on people with deformities, they took care of him, and they thought that they were special beings that were touched by the gods, and that they may have been clairvoyant of sometimes. You know how when you speak to people who have some kind of deformity or some kind of, mental handicap, sometimes they see and think about things in a way that you don't normally see and think about things. Have you ever noticed this before? That people, I'll just be straight. Like, I'll speak to people when I was younger, and I, going to public school, I was around people with Down syndrome a lot more than I am today. And they're extremely sweet and intelligent in a way that's different than our intelligence. They are recognizing things that's different than what we see. And so it's thought that ancient Mesoamericans thought that these people were touched by the gods and there's something special about them and they took care of them. And so we think that these babies may be representing people with ectodermal dysplasia, because when you look at some of these depictions, they have, I'll go back to this one. You see these two teeth coming down right here? That is something that is found all the time in ectodermal dysplasia. And I'm displaying a photo right here.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And so we think that they were venerating people with deformities.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, because if they revered infancy and babies and youth and like very young people, people with Down syndrome, my foster sister has Down syndrome, and who I grew up with, and they're people who are fully adults, yet they retain a very youth-like quality, the youth honesty, the frankness. Like she will call, my sister would call things out that maybe most adults would socially feel like that they weren't able to say. She just see it as it is. I get what you mean by like intense honesty, intense frankness, the observing things. I could see how a society who like to worship babies would also see people with special needs as like having kept this like magical quality of youth and infancy up even when they were adults. Small people.
Yep. Yeah.
Childlike minded people.
Yeah. It's of course, this is all completely speculation. I have a whole chapter kind of covering these different things because, okay, so in the Olmec world, we see these babies that have this sort of quality with these two little fangs that are indicative of ectodermal dysplasia. But then we also see were-jaguar depictions like this, which seem to be something separate from that. You have these people that are half jaguar, half were-jaguar. So, okay, we have babies. We have were-jaguar adults and children. We have shamans with cleft lips. We have giant Olmec heads that look, like normal people. And then you also have statues that look like, your typical average Veracruz Olmec person. We have all these different depictions of these different types of people, in different conditions and different ages. It's just completely a bizarre culture. And so I have a chapter in there where I'm sort of hypothesizing different explanations of what this could mean. I mean, this is very obviously a baby. Babies have their fingers in their mouths. And then look at him. He's wearing that Olmec helmet that you
safety helmet. It's a special needs helmet.
Well, who knows? I mean, but that's another thing.
A safety helmet.
I've presented this idea to people before about the Olmecs potentially venerating children and people with Down syndrome or deformities, and the immediate response that I've gotten from almost all of them is, dude, there's no way that they would do that. That's way too far out there. And I'm like, man, we're basically studying Martians here. They are not anything like us at all. What we think is, our typical paths of thought and logic is just completely different. Just throw it out the window, because as long as you hold on to that, you won't even come close to understanding these people. It's completely different. So,
well, modern day India, they even like today, when children get born with like extra limbs and they think, oh my goodness, I've given birth to a god. Like it's actually quite a common trait, I think, for like human, if you really believe in deities and someone's born with something unique that you can relate to a deity or something. Yeah, it makes sense.
You see, here's that same kind of helmet that's on this guy here.
Yep.
Oh, here's the smiling head.
Oh, he's the happy one. He's my favorite.
This is like the only guy in all of Mesoamerica who's smiling.
Say cheese.
I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding. You have 5,000 years of history and stonework and carvings and depictions of people. This is the only happy guy in Mesoamerica. So it must have been a violent, like macabre, very serious place. Let's see what else we got here. Look at this. Look how strange this is.
Oh wow, I've got to come right up close and look at that. That's That's a weird little nose, a little goblin nose.
Yeah, well, they think it's the mouth and the lips of a jaguar with the fangs there as well.
Oh, he was a
So
hybrid.
it's yes, well, that's what it is. It's a were jaguar, and he also has a cleft in the top of his head as well. So it's like a different form of people. And the problem here is, just kind of wrapping this up. The problem with the Olmecs is there is a separation from the height of Olmec culture into the Maya. So usually we have like things that we have cultures ending that spill into new cultures, and we're
Yeah.
able to kind of trace that cultural heritage back and answer some questions.
Mhm.
The Olmecs begin with monuments like this. They begin a fully fledged, fully organized society with artwork,
Yeah.
stone artwork like this.
Just bam,
And
out of nowhere.
bam, out of nowhere. And then they disappear for a reason that we don't really know. And then several hundred years later, the Maya begin their ascent. And the Maya, while inspired by the Olmecs, like, we often call the Olmecs the mother culture. And in some ways that's true. But in some ways, the Olmecs are just an isolated culture that rises and then falls before the rest of Mesoamerica even begins. So we don't have any connection to the Olmecs. You couldn't go and ask the Aztecs or the Maya in 1519 when Cortez shows up on the beaches of Mexico. He couldn't go and ask people questions about the Olmecs because they're completely disconnected from them. We don't have any way. We don't have anybody that can answer these questions. It's a huge mystery. So that's kind of what the purpose of the book is. It's just diving into the mystery of the Olmecs. So that's probably part one of like 5 different parts of this.
Very cool.
So what about you? Do you have any questions? Anything that's like popping up?
Well, no, I'm just that was really insightful. I think the most interesting thing was the 2 creepy twins that have the pharaoh helmets on, that are like ancient Egypt pharaonic headdresses. Just
you know what? I'm just gonna show this for 1 second.
Go on.
Share this tab.
The fact that they found stuff 60 feet buried is also that's amazing, because I always feel like we really haven't dug everywhere down far enough.
No, not at all. Okay, here we go. So sorry, I'm just showing the headdresses here. So how much does that look like either Lower Egypt or Upper Egypt's crown, where it has the little, I forget, it's like it juts out in the front, and then you have the other crown in the back before the crowns of Upper and Lower Egypt were unified. And then look right here. You know how in Egyptian headdresses you have the serpent, the serpent poking out of the top?
That's coming off the front.
You have the same thing in the Olmec world as well. And these headdresses and crowns have never been discovered. None of the helmets that you see on the Olmec heads have ever been discovered. We don't know what colors they were, what they even could have possibly been made out of. There's not even a hypothesis.
Yeah, it looks like a backwards Egypt. They wore the backwards cap they were doing.
Yep. Yeah.
It's been really cool. It's almost and this is what I get this vibe from things. It's almost if you went to an art class and I was going to describe something to children, and I'm like, I'm going to describe something to you, and I want all of you to paint what you think in your mind. You would get like 30 different images and art styles of the description of the same thing, but you would get like interpretations of it. And so much I can see, it's almost as if someone had started with like an origin concept, and the art had gone in this direction, or someone had retold the idea of it. Like, in the medieval manuscripts, you had artists that were trying to draw dogs, or other animals that had never actually seen them in real life. So they were trying to draw cheetahs, but they didn't quite know what it was. So you get these really weird animals. That we're like, what the hell is that supposed to be? But it was because they were drawing them not from real life, but from like the idea of something. And that's why I think so many of the gods and the fashions seem to mirror each other on different parts of the world, because it's almost as if they all kind of had the same starting point, the same rough idea, and then
well, and that's certainly reflected in Mesoamerican culture. I mean, all of Mesoamerican culture is ancestor veneration, looking back on your ancestors, and deifying them essentially, and you know, blowing up smoke and making sacrifices to essentially acquire the essence of your ancestors and worship them. And they all have, in the Americas, they have extremely similar iconography patterns. Oh man, we can have so many episodes going down those patterns, or going down those rabbit holes. But yeah, in the ancient Americas, from the top all the way northern North America, all the way down to Patagonia in South America, we see religious trends all over the place. And so it's even thought in academia that, at least in the Americas, so half of the planet shares a common mother culture origin of religion that was carried over from Asia. And so then again, you see a lot of similarities between ancient American and ancient Asian iconography and imagery as well. Oh my gosh, we'll have to do one where we go through these statues that were found in the Aztec capital city of Tenochtitlan. I walked into the museum and there's a lion standing there, and it's a lion that's kind of looks like a dragon as well. And I was like, do they have a Chinese section here? Because if you ever been to a Chinese restaurant and you see the little golden lion dragon statues that sit everywhere,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's the same thing. It was exactly the same thing. Blew my mind. That's a whole thing I'll have to go down at some point. But anyways, I don't know where I got off on that topic. But
Very interesting. Yeah, it is interesting.
But in the comments, if anybody has any questions, leave them now. We're gonna check on a couple of the super chats. Jose, what's up, man? When shooting, I recommend RAW and camera settings. I agree with you as well, sir.
Is
And
that aimed at one of us?
I don't know. Maybe I mentioned something about shooting my camera. This popped in a little bit earlier. This was
Okay.
maybe 20 or 30 minutes ago.
Right.
But thank you for the membership, Jose. Runs with scissors. Thank you for the big 5. Wish I could send Jahannah 5. Hope this will suffice. Oh yeah. Good live show. Yeah, and Jahannah and I are splitting all this, so you're sending her a little bit as well. So thank you very much. And Gabriel Fellbaum. That's 24 euros, I'm guessing.
Nice. Yeah.
I'm not. Thank you very much. So I'm so glad to catch you two live. Amazing work you do. Would have lost to be have a.
Would love to have a campfire talk
Okay.
with you one
Yeah,
day
yeah.
in the future. Keep
Yes.
doing. We will keep
Yeah,
doing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, yeah, thank you very much. That's very, very generous donation. And yes, we would love to do that as well. At some point in the future, we're gonna have to do a meetup, but we have to figure out what side of the planet we want to do it on.
We will do one. I'll come over to you. We'll do a meetup, and you come over to me, because you guys are planning on coming over some point to London. So we'll
Yeah.
go
Oh
check out
no,
all the Roman stuff.
I meant like, I don't know when, but when the podcast has a sizable, big audience, and we all want
Okay,
to do
I'll do a big. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So I'm saying for that, we have to figure out what side of the planet we want to do it on.
Okay.
So let me check
Randomly.
the
Meet in the
live
middle.
comments. Let's see, JT. What do you think of the Olmec heads depicting ball players, or that heads were repurposed into shrines, altars, and vice versa? Depicting ball players. I think it's possible because the Olmecs invented the Mesoamerican ball game. So I think that it's very possible that they're wearing maybe they're like leather helmets or something. Maybe. And so I think it's very possible that they're depicting ball games, that heads were repurposed into shrines and altars, vice versa. Ooh, what a great comment. He wouldn't leave this unless he knew a little something about the Olmecs, because that is really hypothesized that some of the heads were so large that they were cut in half to be repurposed for altars. Because when you go and look at some of the altars, you can see where a portion of it may have, like an ear may have been repurposed to be a portal. So like imagine me turning my ear on the side.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a portal to where you see an Olmec person coming out of. So you can take two altars, put them together, and it's like an even bigger head. It's like assembling Power Rangers. Have you ever seen those before?
Yeah.
You take different Olmec monuments and assemble them together, and it makes it bigger.
Autobots assemble.
Yeah. Let's see. Shermanator Osborne, thank you for the big 5. Go to Peru. I agree with you. Jana, have you been to Peru?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I'm gonna fly to Chile, but just to change planes. To go on to Easter Island, but I have to miss the actual Peru trip. Maybe another year. It's on the list, but you know what? It's not going anywhere, so I'll take my time.
Peru's not going anywhere.
All this
Yeah,
ancient stuff.
yeah, you definitely have to get down to Peru. That is such a cool place. I mean, Egypt is obviously the creme de la creme of the ancient world, but Peru is just right there with it. Peru is
Peru's up there.
amazing.
I want to get to the Azores as well. I'm kind of itching to go and
Yep.
look around the Azores.
How
I
long
want
does
to
it
go
take you to get? How long would it take you to get there if you
the
wanted to go?
Azores. Probably about 4 hours on a
No
plane.
way.
Probably.
Is it expensive though?
I haven't looked into it. Let me have a Google. Flights to the Azores from London. Let's see how much it's gonna.
Sorensen. Yes, we are going to do an Olmec trip. I'm probably going to lead an Olmec trip in 25. Just throwing that out there. I'm going in September of this year. I'll be there for about 2 weeks, and I'm also going to go to Bolivia and see Tiwanaku and Pumapunku, and just kind of get my bearings. And I mean, I know a lot about Peru, just haven't been. It's kind of like Egypt. I know so much about Egypt, but I haven't seen it with my own eyes. And
Okay.
yeah, you go ahead.
No, I found the thing. Okay, I was bang on 4-hour flight, London to Azores, and guess how much it will cost me?
1,500 euros.
200.
No way.
Why am I not going to Azores like tomorrow? Like that's
you really should go.
Fun. I should definitely just go. £218 it would cost to go to fly.
You should go. You should go Azores between now and Cosmic, and then
4 hours.
Arrive at Cosmic with photos.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's good to know. Who wants to come to the Azores with me? Let me know. We'll start a little group.
I need to look up how much it would cost me to get to the Azores. Probably a lot.
Probably a lot. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go back to where you were.
No, you're okay. So yeah, been studying ancient Peru for years, ancient South America for years, and I'm going to go for 2 weeks in September, get my bearings, meet some people, and then probably the same time the following year I'll be doing a Peru tour. So I'll tell you guys about that. I will just put this in the back of everybody's mind who's watching now. In December of this year, December 9th through the 15th, I think. No, it's longer than that. Maybe December 8th or 7th through the 16th. It's going to be a long-ish trip. I am launching a tour called Megalithic Mexico, and it's my first solo-led tour. I'm doing it through a company that is run by my professor, Dr. Barnhart, but he's just sending me on the tour. Or we're doing it all through his company, his contacts, but it's called Megalithic Mexico. Nice. And if you go on that tour, you will see every single, well, I shouldn't say every single, but all of the monumental, very important megaliths in Mexico. You'll see all 17 Olmec heads, as well as hundreds of other Mexican megaliths that you did not know exist. I promise you it'll blow your mind. I can't wait to go because it's going to blow my mind again. So just throwing that out there. Also, Shermanator, thank you again for the donation. Let's see. Any other questions coming up? Weekend trip to the Azores.
Weekend trip to the Azores chat.
Let's see. Oh, yeah, I may join in on that. Yeah, I will be officially announcing it probably next week, like right before Cosmic Summit. So Cosmic Summit is second weekend or, June 15th. Around then, and I will be announcing it like shortly before that. Let's see. Sorry, were you about to say something, Jahannah?
No. I was just reading Sarah Lynn's comment.
You want to read this one?
Yeah, she says, I super appreciate what you guys do. Luke Evans, can't wait to get your book. Jahannah, longtime fan and also a hunter and an actress. You're not alone. Would totally tag along for the Azores. Yes. Get a little, I don't want to go like on my own to the Azores. I could fall down a mountain and no one would ever see me again. So always go with buddies. Always go with travel buddies. Safety in numbers.
It'd be cool. And I'm just spitballing. What if you did your own Azores tour? You get like I don't know. I mean, it would have to be people. I bet people would fly over from the US, but if you did like UK based or people that are on that side of the planet, and that it was easier to get to. And you did like a week of staying at a nice lodge or something, talking about ancient history. You give some
Yeah.
presentations, go see certain sites. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Well, and I think last year or whatever, like Randall Carlson was throwing around. There was some chats about, because he wants to go to the Azores, obviously.
Okay. Okay.
And there was a contact that had contacted Randall and had offered to take him and me and anyone to go down in a submersive to try and look around. So somebody has a submersive in the Azores and said, "Do you want to go down?" However, both me and Randall Carlson are claustrophobic, so we wouldn't deal very well with that. So I would put a camera in there maybe and just look. And also after what happened with the submersive in the Titanic on my mind, I 100% I'm not going in like a random submersive. But yeah. So but I really do want to go. And maybe if I could maybe like tag Randall and his team in as well, that would be cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
But I kind of like to go to a place first on my own before I would lead a tour there. But otherwise, it would be like blind leading the blind. I wouldn't know. Like, so maybe
Yeah.
I'd go
Yeah. For
first
sure.
on my own, have a little like recce of it, and then I'd be able to feel confident to bring people. Because I feel quite confident to show people around like Karnak Temple now, because I've been a couple times and I kind
Yep.
of know where bits and bobs are. But yeah.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Well, Miss Jahannah, thank you so much for joining me again on Raiders of the Past podcast.
Thanks,
Everybody
man.
else, thank you guys for joining. I really have a blast doing this. It
This
feels
is
like time
fun.
just flies by, and yeah, I can't wait to build up this podcast and hopefully grow it with everyone here. All of you guys are the day ones that were here from the very, very, very
The
beginning.
OGs.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you all again, and Jahannah, when will we be seeing everybody again?
Next time, we're going to be together in the same place on the planet. We're going to be at Cosmic Summit in Greensboro, North Carolina, 15th, 16th, 17th of June. There are still tickets, and now you can even get like heavily discounted tickets. And if you can't make it to North Carolina, because I appreciate it, it's a long way to go, you can get live stream tickets. So that means you can watch it live, or you can just download it to watch at your leisure, because you get to keep it forever. You get to keep the video forever. There are 27 talks. There's going to be a whole bunch of stuff that you can watch. So that's a super affordable version of it if you want to be involved. So, but you'll see, yeah, we'll be coming live from North Carolina. If we can work out the logistics of the tech, we'll do
Yes.
it.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right. We need to come up with we need to brainstorm and come up with like a slogan that we say at the end to send everybody off. I don't know what it would be, but we'll come up with something.
Yeah, something cool like the future is in the past or something better than that.
The future is in